Led Zeppelin settles into a groove in their fifth studio album, Houses of the Holy. How does it stand up to the rest of their catalog? We've got two Zeppelin experts with us to break it all down. Stay with us. Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. Eric, music, movies, we've got it all.
We do. And perfect introduction. Because you said the right word, and we will get to that. Groove is the word. Groove is the word. Yes.
Wasn't catalog?
I'm excited. So let's go.
Groove. And if you want to groove out with the rest of our catalog, oddly enough, we've got a whole bunch of back episodes that you can check out. So if you're new to the podcast, go ahead and dig in. And after you're done with this one, there's other Zeppelin episodes, so you can go check that out. We've interviewed Clementine Moss, who is she's the leader and founder of an all-female Zeppelin band called Zeppelin. And she wrote a book about her experiences with Buddhism and Bonham. So we've got not only the episodes, but we've got some Zeppelin adjacent material as well. So check it out.
Great interview by the maestro right here. There it is.
And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff as well, too. Yep. Music and movies and stuff that if you don't like Zeppelin, well, then we've got a whole bunch of, we've had 195 other episodes that you could check out of non-Zeppelin stuff. So
we got about maybe 5 Beatles episodes.
and more to come.
Right, exactly.
We'll never run dry on Beatles stuff. So.
Right.
Thank you for joining us. If you're a returning listener, thanks again for stopping by. Thanks for pulling up a chair and sitting in with us. We're going to have a fun episode. We've got 2 guests, and these are 2 guests that we've had individually and with other people, but it's their first time clashing of the Titans. So
Dean is a master of breaking those walls, man, of crossing the boundaries and just, getting these people together. I think it's fantastic.
Like Ghostbusters, like crossing the streams.
Yeah. Worlds colliding. There it is.
I like worlds colliding.
Thank you, Mr. Costanza.
That's it. on planet number 1, we've got Mr. Rob DiStefano. How are you, Rob?
I'm good. I'm super excited for this podcast. Being a huge Led Zeppelin fan,
would have never thought. Would have never pegged.
Yeah, why would we ever think that you were such a Zeppelin fan? I mean, come on.
If you're watching on YouTube, you'll get the sarcasm dripping. What's on YouTube? If you're on audio, he's surrounded by Zeppelin memorabilia and T-shirts, and it's like this is your number 1 band?
It is by a long shot.
That's great.
Wow, far and wide.
Are any of those guitars signed, by the way? Like
no.
Okay.
And it's funny too. I don't have a Les Paul.
Same.
I got to get one of those.
I don't have a Dan Electro, but I have a silver tone, like the Dan Electro that Jimmy Page plays. I should have put it up in the back. But anyway, on planet number 2, circling the Led Zeppelin galaxy, the guy that originally sent out his list and said, "I'll talk about anything Zeppelin," Mr. Christopher Clark.
Hey, what's up? I'm really pumped to be doing this today. Houses of the Holy is actually one of my go-to Led Zeppelin records and probably the second Led Zeppelin album I ever owned. So I'm really excited about this one.
I seem to have chosen a really good album that everybody seems to be excited about. And I didn't. Yeah. I just pulled it out of the ether, as it were.
It's definitely the I think in our circle of people that we knew back in the day, Dean, this was forget Zeppelin 4s, forget Zeppelin 2. As far as I know, people were always quoting this record in the yearbook and stuff. And people were always talking about this record, I think, more than any other. So, for personal reasons, and nostalgic reasons, I think it is the go-to Zeppelin album.
Really interesting. Well, we're gonna talk about that because I think Led Zeppelin 4 casts a very wide and long shadow. Mainly because Stairway to Heaven. I mean, there's a whole bunch of great stuff on that album. Make no mistake, it sold 24 million copies. So, it's at the top of the heap for a reason. But let's get into the stats about this album, and then we'll kind of get going with the conversation because there is a lot. There's a lot to chew on with this album and its placement within the Zeppelin catalogs, and I want to kind of pick the brains of our 2 experts to get their opinion. Plus, we've got a Zeppelin edition of 3 Lies and a Truth.
Nice.
Always a pleasure.
I spent some time in the houses of the holy, going through all the, and I sat down with Aleister Crowley and talked to him about some truth and lies. And we enjoyed a slice of custard pie while we did all that. Then we swam in the ocean. And then I went back to my house
by the seaside.
I went back to my house, which was over the hills and far away. So we could keep going. Feel free.
I hope there wasn't any squeezing of lemons in this.
Well, there we go. Feel free in this episode to throw in any clever Zeppelin titles. If you want to, feel free to throw them into the conversation. Like that. Just set the table for you guys, letting you know it's okay. Giving you the okay to.
We'll bring everything in the light.
There you go. Oh God! You know what? It's too bad, Rob, but I'm gonna have to give all my love to Chris because he hasn't made a joke yet. So our stats. This was released in March of 1973, produced by Jimmy Page. Of course, he is the producer for Led Zeppelin. There were 2 singles released stateside for this album: "Over the Hills and Far Away." Hit a rollicking number 51. Really made a dent on those charts. Not really. And Jamaica hit number 20, which was actually not bad for Led Zeppelin. They were not fans or did not want to ever release any singles in the UK for some reason. They're like, we're not going to release any singles in our native land, but we'll release singles in the US, which was weird. This hit number 1 on Billboard, and it went 11 times platinum. So that's diamond certification. Not bad considering that the album previous to it was Zeppelin 4 or Zoso or 4, whatever you want to call it, which sold 24 million copies. Normally, you sell an album, you have an album with that kind of sales, everything else is going to be a bunt, to use a baseball term, afterwards. Like, it'll never. But 11 million is certainly nothing to sneeze at, right?
No,
absolutely
not. Nope.
For sales, yeah. So, not bad.
Cover art by the Great Hypnosis.
Yep,
it's actually the first time they used them.
Yeah.
A little bit of a controversial cover nowadays, with the adolescents on it, but iconic. I mean, pretty much, Zeppelin is one of those bands that has those iconic covers, even if it's a weird painting like Zeppelin 4, which is kind of like, okay, it's kind of, but they were big for not putting, like on this album, there's no title on the album, there's no band name on the album, right? It's just kind of, here's the artwork, which I always find that a bold statement from a band when they choose to do that.
I love this cover.
Right?
And it's the first album that they actually have a title for it, where it's not just a number.
I never thought to think about that.
Number or no name.
True that, right?
Yeah.
Also, if you ever guys have seen the documentary on hypnosis, they have alternate shots of this particular project, and there's just some great artwork going on there too as well. I mean, just a mountain it was a completely different color palette, and I was like, wow, this is, so some of the other choices I think I might like a little bit better than this cover, but this cover is so iconic.
But and to think how they achieved it, like if you watch the documentary, it's called Circle in the Square.
Yeah,
and it they did a whole sequence on how they took, like, I think it's like 2 kids and like moved them all over the mountain, and then how they colored it afterwards, and like to make this amazing piece of art and like not have Photoshop, in the way they were able to achieve it without any of those technical tricks that they have now.
Yeah, a lot of it was done, practically, almost like in a film when they do practical special effects, right? You had to do this stuff, you had to get the image and then find ways to manipulate it, but manually, not putting it into, scanning into a computer and doing stuff. So, this album, we said it's their 5th album. Their first 4 albums were made at a breakneck pace. They released 4 albums in 3 years. And then there's a 1-year gap between Led Zeppelin 4 and this album. And I think that I think that'll be part of the conversation. I just want to kind of get a little behind the scenes for everybody. Jimmy Page and I think John Paul Jones went ahead and installed home studios at where they were living. Mm-hmm. So that can help speed up the creativity process. They really enjoyed having that. And this way Page could work up demos in his home and then present them, as fully formed ideas for the stuff that he was working on. So that kind of, we see Zeppelin kind of really evolving from a band that's just kind of cranking out music into a band that is now kind of sitting back consciously and kind of creating stuff and really starting to, and with Page really starting to leverage technology. Rob, is that kind of where they are at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, their earlier albums, Led Zeppelin 2 was written while they were touring on Led Zeppelin 1. I mean, when you think about the amount of albums they did put out in that short period of time, you never see that nowadays. And with that time off and with the home studios and stuff, you can sonically you can hear the difference in Houses of the Holy, that there was a little more orchestration and stuff like that, and it definitely comes out in the songs. You can definitely hear that.
Yeah, Chris, it has more of an open feeling. Especially what I did. I did a little experiment is I listened to the very last song from Zeppelin 4.
Right.
And then I immediately put on the first song on this album. And like Rob said, there's a sonic difference, but it's also kind of more of an opening, an expansive sound.
Yeah.
Is that the right word?
I would, a lot of the first 4 records, like one of the things I thought about when, cause I found out about this today. So I was out walking and listening to this. And one of the things I really thought about and I was actually texting with my godfather, who happens to be a really big Led Zeppelin fan. And one of the things about it is it's so different from the 4 that came before it, just not only just in terms of sonics, but in terms of the songwriting. And it's, while the others are more blues, rock, and folk based, this is experimenting with things like funk, and not to use the P word, but there's definitely like proggier elements, like with songs like the Rain Song, and The Song Remains the Same. And then they're experimenting with reggae. So not just the sonics, but just the idea that it was a lot. Not that they weren't daring before, but it just like, it's like, we're going to do what we're going to do. And this is what we want to, how we're going to do it. And that's what I really liked about it, is that it's just so different from the 4 that preceded it. And in a lot of ways you don't really stop to think about.
Yeah. Eric, Chris brought up a good point. It was kind of like, yeah, especially the first 2 albums were really kind of blues, like they're really leaning on the blues, right?
Oh, yeah.
That was kind of like the pillar that they kind of like, okay, here's where we're going to start from. But by the time, and like I said, 4 albums in 3 years is incredible. So most artists, that's like nowadays, that's like a 15-year cycle for an artist. So to crank out 4 in 3 years is pretty intense. It's
insane.
It doesn't leave a lot of time for experimentation or growth. They're just kind of almost like tearing through the first 4, right? And then
while on tour.
Yeah. And then Eric, you get to the 5th album and I think we got something different.
We did, absolutely. This was the first album that they actually wrote all the songs. There weren't any covers. So yeah, I mean, when you mention groove, I mean, we're talking. I'm a big fan of this, of course, rhythm and this stuff. So this was the album. This is the go-to statement for me. When they started doing this kind of stuff, the sort of fast-paced. And Bonham, I have to say, Bonham and Jones really, really, I mean, just established themselves as a formidable rhythm section. I mean, absolutely. And even like Jimmy Page just playing a lot of rhythm, surprisingly enough, but yet couldn't keep up with them. I feel like it, his rhythm chops are a little clunky compared to what they were doing. It's like, Pete Townsend, like in The Who, had to play rhythm because of Entwistle and Moon. They were just taking it like lead instrumentation. In this case, I mean, you had such a solid rhythm section. Page doing a lot of rhythm work on this record, like some of the grooves and stuff. But I find it to be a masterclass in that. It's just, and Bonham, just one of the great all-time drummers. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, Chris, what do you got?
I was gonna say, like, just to kind of build on what Eric was saying, you know, about John Paul Jones. When I popped this on this afternoon, the one thing I kept coming back to is like, this is really John Paul Jones's like breakout moment as far as like Led Zeppelin is concerned. Not that he wasn't a prevalent part of the records before, and not that he wasn't a key element, but because he's not the grandiose personality that the other three are, I think a lot of times he gets forgotten. But on top of like the immense groove and that groove he gets going with Bonham, the bass is definitely a lot more up front, I feel like, on this record. Again, not that it wasn't before, but I feel like it's even more so on this. And then on top of that, you got him with the orchestrations, with the keyboards and the Mellotron, and I think he's the one that played the and Rob, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he plays mandolin a little bit too. Like he's all over this record, like in a big bad way. And I feel like this would be a very different album if his genius as a musician and as an orchestrator wasn't there. Like, I think he's definitely the secret ingredient on this album in a lot of ways.
Rob, you think that there's a difference or, I mean, I'm sure, you know, John Paul Jones was fantastic to begin with, but because the music is changing and getting out of the standard blues formatting, right? Does that give Jones more of a chance to kind of become like the guy that kind of lays down, you know, becomes the solidifying factor, right? Because you've got, you know, a virtuoso like Bonham, and like Eric said, you got a virtuoso like, or Chris said it, like, you know, like Page, and it's easy for him to get lost in the sauce. But yeah, if you listen to his bass playing on the Ocean, it's like he's the one that is keeping that song under control. So Page can kind of go in and out with his crazy solos and come back, and Jones is just kind of holding everything together. He's almost like the glue for these songs.
Yeah. It's also interesting in the fact that even though there's a lot of guitar on this album, it's not really noted for its like normal Jimmy Page type solo work. Like Eric was saying before, Page shines more in his rhythm playing, I think, on this album. Another thing about this album that I sort of look at it in my perspective, it's sort of like a hinge album in a sense that there's before House of the Holy and there's after House of the Holy. And House of the Holy sort of has some elements of the first four albums, but it's also bringing elements that they're going to have in their future albums too. So it's sort of like a demarcation point in the band. And a lot of that has to do with John Paul Jones. You know, the keyboards and the Mellotron come up a lot more prominent on this album than the previous ones. And you'll see that in future albums with Physical Graffiti and Into the Outdoor. And it's a great transitional type album, I think.
You get a bell ring.
Because we love the Mellotron, don't we?
You stole one of my. You didn't steal it, but you took one of my talking points, which was perfect. You used the word hinge. I used the word pivot point in my notes. I was like, I wrote, "Is this a separation point for the band?" Right? Because they had, you know, we're not going to count Coda. So if you don't count Coda, they had 8 true studio albums, 1 through 4, and then Houses of the Holy on, right? And you hit it perfectly, because that's what I was getting from it too, is that Zeppelin will always have the riffs. They'll, you know, and those that never listen to the Ocean, listen to Kashmir, listen to any of the albums after this. That's part of the formula, but there was something different happening here. You know, the sound was getting more mature. It wasn't just blistering solos and let me melt your face. It's more, let's see how we can do this a little more sophisticated, right? Let's kind of, we kind of got, it was almost like we kind of got that out of our system, right?
Yeah.
We kind of, we 4 albums and we kind of like blasted through that stuff. And now it's kind of like we took a year off. We want to get into recording techniques and like it's almost like a Zeppelin 2.0, Eric, right? It's kind of like,
hit the bell, Dean. Hit the bell, because I'm about to say something. I mean, this is their new world record.
There you go.
Isn't it?
Oh my God.
I didn't bring them up.
Right? Am I right? I mean, come on. I mean, the change in sound, the change in production. sense. The first four, I mean, the fourth album had some things going on. I mean, you mentioned the last track, of course, Battle of Evermore has the strings, has the whole like sort of like big sound, almost like you would say like something like from El Dorado or something. But in this case, this is more of a total departure and change, this is where, and this is only 73.
Yeah.
Only that blows my mind. It's only 73. I was like, I'm thinking this is like 75, 76. No, we're still very early on in the 70s here. When, other bands would be doing this kind of thing midpoint and towards the end. So yeah.
It's just you're well, they are doing it midpoint. It's just I'm going to mention it one more time. It's just that their midpoint, the first four albums of the midpoint came so quickly, then the other ones kind of started to spread out. Like after this, it was kind of like, there'll be a year between albums or so, and kind of slow it down, and whatever that meant for the later stuff. It meant Page having some drug problems. I mean, there was other factors, but you've got like a really small timeline, then you have a really extended timeline on the back end, but with the same amount of output. It's just the intensity of the beginning versus the more intentional pace that they took with these albums going forward. Now, before we go any further, just if you've never heard this album, the song "Houses of the Holy" is not on this album. Okay, sorry, it is a bait and switch. It is not on this album. The song "Houses of the Holy" is on a different album. So don't think we're talking about something. Well, that song is not on there. No, it's not. I'm sorry.
It was recorded. It was recorded during the sessions for this record, though.
But they just, for some reason said, let's name the album this, but let's not have a title. Let's have a title track, but let's not put it on this album.
Yeah.
Rob,
are there any other bands that have done that
behind that, or any? Do you know any reason why they just didn't put the title track on the album?
I had read somewhere where Robert Plant said they wanted to use it on a different album, and it was sort of like a joke between them that they were like, oh, yeah, we'll call it House of the Holy, but we're not going to put it on the album. And they just saved it for another album. Because I mean, Physical Graffiti, their next album, had a bunch of songs that were recorded earlier that they put onto that album. But
they kind of cleaned out the vault with Physical Graffiti.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then they did it again with Coda. It was kind of like, whatever's left, or we got some live stuff and we'll call it studio, or vice versa, whatever. They, kind of didn't leave a lot on the cutting room floor. The thing I noticed about this album too is there's a different energy to it. Right, with the opening song, with the song, the opening track, the song remains the same. I mean, it's got an urgency to it. It's it kind of really just opens up the album in a way that is different from all the other ones. Like I said, all the other, there's the blues based Zeppelin, and then this is kind of like something different, and there's just a maturity to it, Chris.
I was gonna say it. To me, this is an album where, again, and you could tell me if I'm interpreting it wrong. To me, like the first 3 or 4 Zeppelin records, it's always like it's either a bombastic hard rock or blues song, or like a mellowed out folk song. Whereas I feel like this album, the songs within themselves, there's more dynamics. Like if you think of a song like the Rain song, it starts out very subtle and sets this mood, and then at the end, it's like there's this like bombastic end to it with. The final piece to it, or even like the song remains the same. It comes out really hard, but then it kind of like slows down and kind of mellows out for a second before it picks up again. Like I feel like the songs themselves, there's more dynamics within a lot of them that you didn't see necessarily on some of the previous records.
Yeah, absolutely.
Except maybe for Stairway to Heaven, where you do have those dynamics.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that was kind of, I hear some undertones of Stairway to Heaven on this album too. But George Harrison has a little hand in this, right? For the
yes,
Rain
he does.
song?
Yep.
Yeah. George Harrison has famously said, you guys don't really do any ballads, or you don't do enough ballads. Like what's
such a weird thing to say. I mean, all you need to do is listen to Zeppelin 3.
Zeppelin 3, Tangerine.
Yeah, Tangerine. Yeah. There's a number of songs that are acoustic based. I mean, we're not talking folky. necessarily, but they're I mean,
he felt it wasn't enough, so
I guess, but
they write the Rain song, and what they did is they used the opening chord structure to Something by the Beatles as kind of a little nod or homage or a shut the fuck up. Whatever.
Well, that's what that was Page's attitude. He's like, "I'll give you a ballad. Here we go. There it is, the Rain song." And he wrote that.
And the Rain song, and then you get one of my favorite Zeppelin songs, "Over the Hills and Far Away." It's just it's beautiful, it's majestic, it's rolling, it's got the classic Zeppelin groove to it, right? It's got some of that. It's got some of the callbacks to Zeppelin 2 or some of their funkier, bluesier stuff. But again, it's just got these songs have a new sophistication to them. You know, they sound it doesn't sound like they're just trying to get through the song or have a faithful blues rendition of something. It's like this is them taking all the stuff from the first 4 albums, and now, like, is this like, Rob? Would you say this is like really the like almost the true debut of Led Zeppelin? Would you say, since you called it a hinge album, is this like really like is this what Led Zeppelin is in its purest form?
As a a huge Led Zeppelin fan, for someone who's
would have never thought that,
who's just starting to get into Led Zeppelin maybe or interested in Houses of the Holy would be the first album I would tell someone to listen to. Because it's sort of going back to what I was saying before as a hinge, it sort of gives you a full scope of what their sound is like. And it's a very clean album. You know, other albums like Into the Outdoor and stuff like that, the production's a little muddy and stuff like that, but the songs on this album are very well produced, and sonically it's a very clear album, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Let me put it this way. This is what I wrote, Eric. Is this, and I don't mean this in the way it's going to come out, but is this the most listenable Led Zeppelin album?
I think so.
Right? And Chris made a face, so I want to get to him. But I
know exactly what you're saying. It is, they found their voice with this record. They found their signature sound.
And I think it's something easy to listen to. Meaning not that is easy listening, but I think for someone who's new to Zeppelin, and I admittedly I did not listen to this album very much when it was going through everything in my Zeppelin time. So when I was listening to this and really listening, I'm like, this is really just kind of an enjoyable listen I think
for a non Zeppelin fan, it's probably their most accessible album.
That's a better term.
Someone who's not really into it or maybe doesn't know them, it's sort of,
the blues,
I don't want to say commercialized, but it's something that's
it's just because of everything you said, and then I'll kick it over to Chris. Because of the production, because Robbie said it's got a clean sound to it. I think all of those things make for just an enjoyable listening experience. So they're able to present the music and they present it in just such a way that it's clean, enjoyable to listen to, and sounds good. Now, Chris, you were making some grimace. I don't know if it was a grimace or what it was, but
I was trying to. First of all, I've said, I'll say this: my go-to Led Zeppelin records are 3, this, and Physical Graffiti. If I'm gonna pop on Zeppelin, and those are the 3 I usually think about. The first, usually 3, but the one that I think about, like as far as like an entry point, like when I was a little kid, I had this one and I had 4. And I always skipped all the songs that were a little bit either like ballady or folky and went for all the hard rock songs, because I guess that's just where my head was at. And I felt like the one that really got me down the wormhole of Zeppelin was Led Zeppelin 2, because like it's because I was a hard rock fan. So that was like kind of, so to me that was right. And so to me, that was more my entry point. Like to me, that was almost the most listenable, because it didn't require this one. I felt like it was like a grower on me. Like I didn't really appreciate the subtleties and the moods and all that kind of stuff until I was getting into like being a teenager and into college and those kinds of things. And that's when I really grew to appreciate those songs. Whereas like Led Zeppelin 2, it didn't require all of that. It was like, to me, that was just pure ear candy. And so like that to me, that was always kind of like my entry point record. Like even after having had this record first, Led Zeppelin 2 was, until I got older, was usually my go-to.
Yeah, I'm definitely partial to Zeppelin 2 just because, like we said in our episode, go listen to it. It's like our first episode.
Yeah,
it's a riff fest. So yeah, from a listening standpoint, it's easy to kind of pick up that album and just kind of be like, oh yeah, a lot of that sounds familiar. But from a different experience, from putting this on, it's 8 songs, so you kind of get through it pretty quick, you know. But because of the things that they're doing, you know, Zeppelin 2 could be very one note because it's all blues based and it's very and it is rapid fire riff after riff for the most part. Obviously, there's some exceptions there, but for this, I think what makes this when we say the listenable or whatever term we want to use, I think there's so many different styles of music on here, but then
there's something for everyone.
Something for everyone, but it just sounds so great to listen to also.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's not like, it doesn't suffer from murky production or a heaviness that some of the other some of the other songs, even on Zeppelin 4 has, like, it feels like it's got like a weight on your shoulder.
It's like an audiophile. If an audiophile is going to listen to Zeppelin, it'd be this one.
Yeah.
I mean, blues was very much their staple, and they were trying to establish a new way of presenting it, right? Which they got a lot of heat from critics and certain other artists who would not appreciate. They weren't purist. They were trying to change, but that's Zeppelin. I mean, they're trying, and with this album, they acknowledge the fact that right now, well, we need to change even more. Now we need to establish something, even more, make more of a statement, I think. And I think this album really kind of shines in that sense. And it just all those little elements, but like you're always fond of saying, Dean, like it's very concise at this point, right? Even now they're combining all of those little blues instrument, like there might be a little bit of folk and blues still in this, but it's very refined at this point because they know how to do that. So I think, like going further, this would be the thing. This would be the way they sound from this point on, I think.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like Zeppelin like powered up.
And then Presence would be like their full on, as Jimmy Page put it. I think he said it in Hammer of the Gods, that was their full on prog album. That was them doing, acknowledging the prog scene, I think, in more.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But
Presence is the only album they have that doesn't have any keyboards on it.
Yeah.
Is it really?
Well, it's all guitars and bass.
Wow.
But I love it. I think there's some great stuff on there, man. I think it's one of their most underrated. Yep. I don't think there's a lot of hits on it at all.
There's not anything that's kind of in the canon of like stuff you'd hear.
Nobody's Fault But Mine, I think, is fantastic. Yeah, I just love that record. Yeah, some good stuff. I mean, again, blues, but also combining just some really experimental stuff. I mean, just some really great elements to it, and just growing in that. Like Jimmy Page would be, I would say he's the star of that record, for no doubt. And I think, like I said, I think in this album, I think I like the rhythm section on this record. The groove of it is just fantastic.
So then I was going to talk about another song, but we'll get to it anyway. Let's talk about the crunge. I mean, if you want to talk about funk and something,
found the bridge.
It's my like one of my favorite tracks, and this really shows the talent of John Bonham, the range that he has. So that time signature on that is not easy, and for a rock drummer who's used to just, sort of playing heavy. I mean, this was something really, really sophisticated stuff going on here, I think.
Let me ask a question I'll put it to all three of you. Eric, you can go first. Should the crunge have just been a straight up instrumental? Was there enough on that? Were they doing enough interesting stuff that it didn't need? When I listened, I'm like, does this really need vocals? Because there's so much. They're doing so much other stuff. They're channeling funk, and just all this crazy stuff going on. I'm like, did it really need vocals? So Eric, go first.
The way Plant projects his voice and the way it's recorded, and again, it's very, in the recording process, it acts as if it is instrumental. It's like the words mean nothing. Don't pay attention to any lyric. Just the way his voice, it's almost like another instrument. It's just projecting as a sound to add to the weirdness of it. And it just I don't mind it at all. I think it's great.
Rob, instrumental or no?
No, I think it's Plant tapping into his inner James Brown there.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Chris, vocals or no on the crunch?
Rob basically said where I was going too, is that this was supposed to be like a like taking the piss out of James Brown. Apparently they tried to create a time signature or a rhythm that was purposely not danceable, even though it sounded danceable. Like there was something I read about. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think it's all of those elements make the song. And to me, again, John Paul Jones's bass line on the song is just sick. It's just so good.
It just adds to everything that I love about this. Those odd little numbers that these groups can do. This is the stuff I love. This is the weirdness of it. That just the boldness of it. Just absolute. Nobody's gonna the attitude that nobody's gonna like this necessarily, but we fucking love it. That I saw. Oh man, I dig it. And I heard that this was considered. I think I read today, like on YouTube, there was some of the the new kids listening to this stuff, and they're saying, "Is this the worst Zeppelin song ever?" And I'm like, "No
way.
Hell no!"
Absolutely not.
To tap into what Chris was saying about the song being undanceable, I think I'd read somewhere that Bonham purposely did that, playing the drums.
Yep.
And it's pretty ironic that the next song on the album is Dancing Days.
So,
yeah.
You know what? And they've got, and that's the thing about Zeppelin. Everything's, the occult and pages into this and that. They have a really dry sense of humor. Like you said, not putting the title track on the album. A song like Jamaica or Dire Maker, if you're reading it out phonetically, but to the point where they wanted to release it as a single, and John Paul Jones is like, you can't release Jamaica as a single. It's too goofy. It's a joke. And Robert Plant was like, no, I think there's something there. Like, I think it's kind of like, I kind of dig it. And they did, and it hit number 20. So it was, so even the stuff that they think is like a throwaway, or like, we're just kind of fucking around in the studio and see what comes out. Oh yeah, we got this kind of reggae style song, and it turns out to be a classic. It turns out to be one of the
fucking airplay, didn't it?
Damn.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, it's kind of funny about that too, because like I said, when you asked me about this evening, I texted my uncle, because he's a Led Zeppelin fan. I said, "Is there anything that I should mention about this record?" And he said, "You probably know more than I do. However, the one thing about that album that I was surprised was that Jamaica didn't become a bigger hit. Like, he, in his mind, as a teenager in the 70s, he thought that song wasn't as big as, I guess, as a top 20. But to me and my 18-year-old friends at the time, we loved that song and cranked it. It wasn't Black Dog or rock and roll, but it was different. And it had a good hook, which is, I guess what a lot of people thought about Led Zeppelin is, like, it doesn't all have to be Black Dog or Heartbreaker or
it was just an accessible, fun song to listen to. It didn't demand a lot. Sometimes Zeppelin can demand a lot from you, especially on their longer songs. They're asking for your attention, but a song like that is like, for them, it's like we're just having fun, to throw away. Let's fool around with reggae, and it's like people love it.
My oldest brother is not a Zeppelin fan. Jamaica's that's his favorite song by Zeppelin.
Yeah, that's the one song.
I guess that goes to accessibility. You said accessible, right? When I said listenable, I think you said accessible.
Yeah,
I think that's what a lot of this is, but they're not. It's accessible without compromise. I think I want to get that point across. This wasn't Zeppelin kind of selling out or try. Zeppelin never tried. As far as I know, Zeppelin never said, we're going to try and make hit singles, or we're going to try and make sure, like a lot of those artists did. It's like, well, we want to make shorter songs so we can kind of get the point across. Zeppelin didn't seem to care about that. They said, like, we're just going to do what we do. If it's short, it's short. If it's long, that's what it needs to be, right? Each song is going to be what it needs to be. We're not going to try and shove it into a mold. If we make a one-off throwaway reggae style song and we like it, we're putting it on the album. You know, we'll you know, if for them, if it sticks to the wall, then it was good enough. You know, and as you can see, they didn't have a lot of fat. It wasn't like they recorded tons and tons and tons. There's a lot of live stuff, but there wasn't a lot. You know, they were very, I guess, Chris, very lean in the studio.
Right. Well, I mean,
recording what was needed.
Right. I mean, and I guess at least with the first 3 or 4 records, it was kind of like they didn't really have much time to do much of anything else, right? Because they were on the road and they, you know, how many different studios Led Zeppelin 2 was recorded in, and they, you know, they cranked it out because they didn't really have the time to do much else. They took the time to make the record and then they moved on. So, you know, and even with this one, they did what they needed, and they, when they were ready, they recorded, and that was it.
But consider what was recorded, though.
What they recorded, right?
Yeah, the composition of these songs is enough. I mean, it's
and the care and the obvious focus they put into these things. And it's kind of interesting, you know, just to kind of go back to that whole thing with Jamaica going to number 20 and the record selling 11 million copies. Again, like just kind of going back and forth with my uncle this afternoon, he kept coming back to the idea that like this one got overshadowed by Led Zeppelin 4.
Everything did.
His head that it's almost like it just didn't sell that well. Like that was almost the tone that, like, it's just amazing to think like a record of 11 million that sold 11 million copies and this beloved. Some people have this, I guess maybe it's just through time and thinking back on the time that like it didn't.
Yeah, I mean, Zeppelin 4 is always going to be a titan. It's always going to be the one.
Yeah.
That was the first one. I think that was the first cassette I bought because it had Stairway on it, right? And it's got Black Dog.
Yeah.
Like there's enough on there for you to kind of get going with it, you know.
Oh, it's a great album. There's no doubt about it.
It's a phenomenal record, 100%.
Masterpiece. But that's like, you know, and I find a lot of like my son, like when he got into Zeppelin, this was the very first album that he you know, got into first. And I'm
Houses
like,
or 4?
Houses.
Okay.
And I, you know, and I had played him like some of the earlier stuff, but of course, you know, blues it's harder to, you know, it's that has to take its course. That has to run its. I mean, it takes its time. You're either into it or you're not. It's like I find that if you're not a fan of blues, then this is the album for you. I mean, you know, this is definitely. I mean, because the blues can be very heavy, like you said, like very heavy and just sort of very intense
or redundant if you're not into it. Everything can start to sound the same.
It can sound the same, but I mean, but on the other hand, you could look at it from it's a point of view, and it's a state of mind. The psychological aspects of blues is just a whole nother thing. And if you're a diehard blues fan, people understand that about it and in the intensity, but also the sort of sexiness of it too. There's that side of it, you know, the erotic sense. And I guess a lot of that, you know, kind of stemmed from that. But here they didn't almost feel like okay, we did that. We got the fan base, but now we're ready to do something new. We're trying to, so musically, I think they really spread their wings here. And I just,
Would it be fair to say that for people that think kind of the blues, they don't really get into it, or it's kind of redundant, would it be fair to say that they think the song remains the same? Crickets. Yeah.
Hey, we're laughing. Somebody's
yeah.
Let me ask Rob a question, since you guys and Chris too, but do you have the CD Encomium that came out in 1995, 1996?
I do.
I'm going to say Stone Temple Pilots' version of Dancing Days is not bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's pretty formidable. Chris, you ever hear it?
Well, that record came out when I was in high school and we all first started driving, and it was on K-Rock all the time. That record, particularly Dancing Days, it was always on the radio. And to your point, and Rob will probably not want to ever do a podcast with me again. I almost like STP's version of Dancing Days better than the Led Zeppelin version, just because it's that just like that whole acoustic vibe to it. I don't know. Like, and again, STP was kind of a staple band when I was 16, so that might be part of it too. But
no, I did. Yeah. I think it was I said it's a formidable cover.
Yeah, it's a really good cover of that tune.
Yeah. All right.
There's a really good video of them doing it on Howard Stern if you ever go down the YouTube wormhole.
Yeah. There was actually a laser disc and a videotape of that of Encomium, like it's short little snippets of all the different artists kind of performing it and why they chose the song they did and and it's a great eclectic collection of artists covering
it is.
Anyway, I think now's a good time as any to test these guys out with 3 lies and a truth. Let's see how these Zeppelin guys really are. let's test the lead in the Zeppelin and see. So what we're going to do, if you're new to the show, we're going to read 4 statements. 3 of them are lies. They're made up. Only 1 is a golden nugget of truth. These 3 gentlemen will have to sort out the subterfuge, part the seas and go through the smoke and find out what the truth is. So you can play along at home. Let us know on social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, how you did. Let us know if I stumped you or you knew all along. So we're going to go. Here we're going to go. I'm going to read off 4 statements. 1 of them is true. Eric's going to go first. Eric is the sacrificial lamb. Because I want to save,
Thank you.
I want to save these guys because they're the
what else is new? Yeah,
we'll have to show them. We'll have to show them no quarter.
That's it. We're going to throw them in the ocean.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Thank you, Rob.
I think we exhausted every song title off this one. By the way,
there's a whole bunch of other albums.
I might lament in the rain song. I might stand out in the rain and just.
You have to find the bridge to the right answer.
If you get it wrong, you'll be a fool in the rain. Okay?
Oh, there you go. Brilliant.
And it won't be anybody's fault but your own.
Exactly. We're not limited to this album with the puns. It's all the whole catalog. If Eric gets this wrong, he might have the Traveling Riverside Blues.
Okay. Then I'll have to slip my wrist and go to take that stairway to heaven. There you go. Or maybe, I don't know. Sorry, a little extreme there, but getting a little dark. Hey, it's Halloween, right? Come on.
There you go.
This right. The aftermath of Eric's joke. All right, let's do this. I'm going to read off the 4 statements. One of them is only 1 is true. So here we go. Statement number 1. The song Achilles' Last Stand is the longest studio recorded song, clocking in at 10 minutes and 31 seconds. Number 2, when they played in Denmark, Led Zeppelin, Countess Zeppelin protested their use of the family name. Zeppelin then played their shows in their Danish shows known as the Knobs. Statement number 3, it would only be 1 year between the time Led Zeppelin played their last show as the New Yardbirds and then as Led Zeppelin. Final statement, as a studio musician, Jimmy Page contributed to recording the incidental music to the Beatles movie Help. I'm going to read them again. Number 1, Achilles' Last Stand is the longest studio recorded song, clocking in at 10 minutes, 31 seconds. Number 2, when Zeppelin played in Denmark, Countess Zeppelin protested their use of the family name, and Zeppelin then played their Danish shows known as the Knobs. Number 3, it would only be 1 year between the time Zeppelin played their last show as the New Yardbirds and then as Led Zeppelin. Only 1 year passed between those 2 occurrences. Finally, as a studio musician, Jimmy Page contributed to recording the incidental music for the Beatles movie Help, because he was a prolific session man and played on a lot of songs. He did a lot of session work before Zeppelin. So, Eric.
Which one is the truth?
Which one is the truth? There's a whole lot of lying going on. Got a whole lot of lying.
You know what? I'm gonna go with the first one. Number 1.
Achilles' Last Stand is the longest studio recorded song.
I'm probably wrong about that, but yeah, I think I'll go with that.
They've got a lot of songs in the 6, 7, 8 minute range, and then
right. I know it is long. I know that like I said, that's their prog stuff. So yeah, that might be true. Yeah.
We're going with statement number 1. Christopher Clark.
All right, I'm finding the truth, right?
You're finding the truth.
All right, the one about Countess von Zeppelin not wanting them to play as Led Zeppelin, so they had to play as the Knobs. That's the truth.
So someone curiously known as Countess Zeppelin protested the use of their family name. So Zeppelin played the Danish shows as the Knobs.
That's
all right. Going with number 2 as the truth. Robert Plant DiStefano.
I'm gonna concur with Chris there, because I think if I'm correct, Achilles' Last, I think In the Light might be longer.
Okay,
but I'm not sure. But
you're not sure. So you're not sure about that,
right?
So
but
I could be wrong. Okay, all right. I'm just
because I know they had
why don't you go
had
down by
problems
the
with the
seaside and
name.
think about it a little more. Come back to me when you're 10 years gone.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with
number
that
2.
was number 2.
When Zeppelin played in Denmark, Countess Zeppelin protested the use of their family name. So Zeppelin played the Danish shows known as the Knobs. All right.
Yes,
so we've got two experts going with one. They concur, and then Eric is the outlier. Okay. At home, make sure you lock in your answers again. Let us know how you did playing 3 Lies and a Truth. We're going to go with the first lie. As a studio musician, Page contributed to recording the incidental music to the Beatles movie Help. That is a lie, but he actually did work on A Hard Day's Night as a studio session man, with the incidental music, not the Beatles stuff, but the incidental music that they would use in the score. Because like I said, he was a very prolific session man. Lie number 2. It would only be 1 year between the time Zeppelin played their last show as the New Yardbirds and then would reemerge as Led Zeppelin. That is totally false because, amazingly, it was only 62 days between those occurrences. Yeah. That is a very fast transformation. Like, we got to get this name off of our backs as soon as possible, and we need to reemerge. I certainly wasn't going with the Led Zeppelin origin of their name story because everyone knows that. So it wasn't going to be that easy, gentlemen. So we've got 2 statements left. One of them is true and one of them is false. What do we want?
Well, I know what the truth is.
Oh, wow. Wow. So basically what you did is you just, trampled Eric underfoot.
I did.
Come on, you got to give it to me.
Well.
You got to give it to me. Come on. I have the ability to fold these in with such seamlessness.
Stop being a hot dog.
There you go. Okay, we're going to go with the lie. And you are correct. Achilles' Last Stand is not the longest studio recorded song, but it is not what Rob said. So this expert ain't so expert. It's in My Time of Dying is 11 minutes and 8 seconds song long. So yes, you gentlemen are correct. The Zeppelin professionals have kept their credentials because when they did play in Denmark, Countess Zeppelin, from where the actual name of a Zeppelin comes from, the family name, protested the use of their family name. So they had to play their Danish shows as the Knobs, which is not a clean. It's a little bit of a.
There's a picture somewhere where it's a picture of that lady and Robert Plant. She's like yelling at him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She apparently was cool. She was apparently cool with it, and then somehow saw the cover of the first album, which is the Hindenburg, going down, and then
and said, "You're hurting the family brand."
Yeah.
Countess Zeppelin. It sounds like something from an Austin Powers movie. Countess Zeppelin. Yeah. It sounds like such a fake name, but yeah, they're the namesake from the airship. So thank you everybody for playing, guys. Well done, you guys. You did it. You tested. I tested your metal, and I thought that was going to be kind of obscure, but then I started reading. The more I was doing more trivia research, it kept coming up. I'm like, I tried to, we had to bring it into the light.
I think that was in Hammer of the Gods. That's.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I'm sure. If you guys read any biographies, I'm sure it was in there. But I picked off one of you. I snagged one. That's not bad hunting. 1 out of 3. Two ducks got away. I got 1 duck. All right. Should we talk about favorite songs? What do you think?
Sure.
What do you think? Is this or is this just the whole thing? I mean, is there any? There's no. Eric, any skip? How about this? Any skippables on this? I don't think so, right?
Nope.
No.
You're not skipping over to say, I really want to get to.
No, this is a full on. And if you have the vinyl, it's even better. you have to listen to this all the way through. Yeah, it's great.
That's my key to being a Led Zeppelin listener, and I explain this because Led Zeppelin they didn't want the singles, they wanted to be an albums band.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and that's how I listen to Led Zeppelin all the time. I'll never put on Led Zeppelin and put random. I always listen to them by albums. I'll go in like one week or 2 weeks. I'll listen to Physical Graffiti, then I'll move to like Presence, then I'll go back to Zeppelin too. But I always listen to them in the context of their albums. I don't usually skip around when I'm listening to them. I like to stay focused, and I think you get a little more out of the songs when you do it that way.
Yeah, I think if you skip around, you could tend to get a little dazed and confused. Too much? Too much?
No, I think that was right on the money.
Okay.
Eric was done like 5 years ago with this.
Yeah,
Eric's been done for 40 years. He's had to endure.
Yes.
So he's got a special level of tolerance that you guys have not built up yet.
But I do have a very soft spot for the Crunch, though. Yeah. I think that's probably my favorite track off of, because it's just so awesome. It's just so weird, and So that's my go-to.
I think it's the way the album just flows too. The songs just kind of they're all so different when they there's an overall feeling in the album, but each song is starts off differently. So it's not like, oh, we're getting into a theme of kind of like, here's a block of songs that have a similar kind of feel to it. This thing is just like something different. Especially if you take, literally every song. Like if you take every song, it's got something totally different to it that's unique and not repetitive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what and that statement would probably sound like this isn't very cohesive, Rob. Right? It would sound like, oh well, that sounds like a mess, but it works because of how well it's produced and how great everything sounds. It's just kind of like, yeah, you know what? I'm ready for the next one. Oh wow, this is like over. It's starting off Over the Hills and Far Away with just really acoustic and just this really nice kind of riff, and then it picks up and starts chugging along. And then you get something like The Crunch, which is totally different, a totally different listening experience. And then like I said, then Dancing Days comes after that. So each one is just something kind of like Zeppelin is saying, well, here's just the different facets of what we are. Mm-hmm. Right? Is that what this album really kind of showcases?
Yes. Yeah. It's all their perfect, all their best elements for sure.
Yeah. So let me ask this. Where does this, we'll go with Rob first, then Chris, and then Eric. Where does this rate on your, in your tally of Zeppelin albums? 1 through 8. We'll leave off Coda because we know what that'll be. So where does this rate? And it might be hard. And yes, I know sometimes things change based on where you're at and what you're feeling. But where you're at right now, where does this rate?
For me, it's definitely in the top. I would say top 3.
Okay.
I always kind of float between, like I said, my 3 go-tos are this, 3, and Physical Graffiti, and depending on how I feel at the time, will tell you which one is number 1. Usually,
if you want a quick, easy listen, what are you going to put on?
Led Zeppelin 3. But Zeppelin this 3, one, okay. But this one, like listening to, like I'd been a long time until tonight. It had been a long time since I'd listened to it, and I really went through it, and I was like, "Fuck, this really is a good album." Like, and like I just, I'd probably put this, depending on my mood, it would definitely be somewhere in the top 3 for sure.
Okay. So it's always circling the top. It's
always circling near the top for sure.
Okay.
In terms
Rob?
of Zeppelin.
My Desert Island disc is for Zeppelin is Physical Graffiti, and as a Zeppelin fan,
is that because it's a double album? I mean,
because there's more songs on
it. You're just being greedy. You're being greedy at that point.
But I mean, I would probably put it closer to the top. House of the Holy. No Quarter is one of my favorite songs of theirs. It's one of my favorite riffs that Jimmy Page plays, even though it's a very simple riff.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about that song where it always captures me every time I listen to it. But yeah, House of the Holy, I would put that towards the top. If I had to rank them, it's like for me it's like, which kid is your favorite? Which one of your kids is your favorite? But it's definitely one that I listen to as an album a little more than some of the others as far as listening to it. Yeah.
Eric?
This is the go-to album for me, but it makes me want to listen to more Zeppelin.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
It makes me want to go back. And like you say, Chris, I think 3 is an amazing record. It took a long time for me to get into that record, by the way. I didn't like it that much at first, but then, yeah, I mean, it is, again, it's a very unique album. And I think there is several, I mean, like I said, I like Presence a lot too. But this would probably be the target album for me to, just to listen to, because you got Over the Hills and Far Away, you got, that in itself is a classic, but it's might be overplayed, but it's like, but I like I said before, I think people quote this song. I know people have quoted this in their yearbook sayings, it's but it's an amazing song. It is an evergreen. It's absolutely.
So do you think when you finally got into Led Zeppelin 3, you said it took you a while, that when you finally got into it, would you say it was a celebration day?
Yeah. Yes.
And that's
very good. That's that one I will respond to, because yes, I absolutely. Yeah.
We're gonna ask everybody. Hang on.
I'll go with Rob too. I mean, I'm a big fan of Physical Graffiti.
Oh, such a great record.
Great stuff on there. I think 10 Years Gone is probably one of my all-time favorite tracks.
In the Light.
Oh my God.
The Rover on that was recorded during the House of the Holy session too.
Yeah. Several tracks, I think. Yeah. Yep.
What I like about House of the Holy is like I said to you guys, I got this record. I think I couldn't have been more than like 11 or 12. So like the Crunge and like I wanted to hear the rocker. So like the Crunge and No Quarter, and those were always kind of the ones I would fast forward through if I could.
Yeah.
And now that I'm older, those are the ones that took a lot of spins for me, and those are the ones that always seem to endure for me on this record. Are like the Rain Song and No Quarter and the Crunge, and the ones that were a little bit more of a challenging listen, I think, are what makes this album
kind of the work in, right? Because you put the work in on them, right?
Right. And then I read another thing, and Rob, I don't know if this is true, but when I was just flipping fast through some facts about Houses of the Holy, they recorded a whole bunch of Elvis covers at Electric Lady Studios when they were doing the album, and they've never seen the light of day.
Yeah, rockabilly stuff, I heard.
Yeah, like I can't imagine what that must have sounded like. That had to be amazing.
Listen to the Honey Drippers.
I was just about to say.
Fair enough.
When it comes to the House of the Holy, I would definitely suggest to get the re-release one they did like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It has sort of like slightly different versions of the songs.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting to hear like a different aspect of the song. It's pretty cool.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. I think that's going to do it for this episode. Now, I'm going to put out a challenge to everybody that's listening is let us know on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, how many references did we make in the episode? I need somebody to count them because they were coming fast and furious. And listen, I'm not the only one, Eric. These guys were there too. So
I know. I put in a couple too, but
side eye though. I know it was excessive, but we made it through.
How many more times can we do it?
We're all friends
before he ends the episode.
I said we're all friends.
Yeah.
Oh.
Although that would have been the first
Thank
one
you,
in the
Dean.
beginning. I say welcome friends to the 3324 podcast. So I started off in the beginning with it, not even
there you go.
I think we had a lot of fun with this episode. It's a great album to listen to.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's easy to get Led Zeppelin 4, and it's easy to want to have the album with Stairway to Heaven, and you should. You absolutely should. But I think once you kind of got through that, and you want to hear what Led Zeppelin was kind of, after they took their break and said, okay, here's really like we're going to stretch our muscles and really kind of put some of the work in and see what Led Zeppelin is. And I think that's what this kind of represents is, getting, like I said, knocking all the influences out of the way and kind of clearing the road of all the blues and kind of getting it out of their system. And then it's like, okay, well, what's left? This is what I think launches them for the next cycle of albums. And Rob put it perfect when he used the word hinge. right? It's that Separation album that kind of puts them on a new path. And like Eric said too, 1973, you would not think that this was so early in the 70s, but their output was so intense that they kind of did all they were on a very steep and fast learning curve that they got 4 albums like knocked out of the park quickly, and then kind of relaxed and really was able to experiment and kind of fool around and see what they wanted to do with stuff. And that was probably getting to know those first 4 albums are probably really getting to know each other too. They probably just, like I said, not a lot of material, a lot of touring. So it's like let's kind of do this and let's kind of, strike while the iron's hot. Let's kind of be, very prolific, really not a lot of fat on the bone. And then, okay, let's exhale. And now what? And this is what we got. Well, great album. Houses of the Holy, which again does not have the title track on it. You'll need to go to a different album.
Graffiti.
That's why Rob likes it, because he wants the title track on the album, but he can't get it in this album, so he's got to take that album.
Plus, Houses of the Holy is their only album where they have, if you have the album, the record album, where they have the lyrics to their songs.
Oh, really? Oh, see that?
Yeah,
that I didn't know. Well, wow, that's crazy.
Look at that trivia.
Yes, you are right about that. Yeah,
I love
looking at the vinyl today. Yeah,
love the trivia. Love the trivia. Huh? That's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. Go ahead and follow us Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. New episodes come out every Thursday. The way that you don't have to task yourself with remembering that is just follow us. And this way you'll get a notification on your favorite podcast provider when those episodes come out. You can also text us from within the app. We can't respond, but if you want to give us some feedback where we can't respond to you, you want to go off on us, and the amount of puns we had, I can't respond, but you can let us know. And maybe we should, endeavor to, I don't know. It seems like they just fit. It seems like their titles just seem to fit like in conversation.
Yeah. Maybe we should just use it all the time. Right.
Well, don't do that. Eric, be careful if you open that door. If you leave it even a little bit ajar, you don't close it all the way and nail it shut.
Okay.
That's all
He's looking for the bridge to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Hats off to Christopher Clark. That's the final one.
Wow.
We're going to leave it there. This is a lot of fun, though. I'm having a blast.
Yes, it is.
I could do this for another 3 hours of puns. But anyway, we'll leave it there. Go check it out. It's streaming on all the services, like Rob said. There's a deluxe edition as well that's got all the extra stuff. So if you are so inclined, you want to hear some different mixes, have at it. But you'll do just fine with the original version. It sounds beautiful. You're not going to be disappointed with that. You won't be missing anything out by going the original way. So, Christopher Clark, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Stepping in at the last moment, and he rose to the challenge, and I
enjoyed it.
And he dominated in three lies and a truth. So I may be regretting asking him to come in at the last minute, because one less fish in the net for me. Mr. Rob DeStefano, of course.
Yes.
Zeppelin, we bow before the Zeppelin master, and we appreciate you coming on. It's been a while, but we'll see you again.
It's great to be back.
Thanks. It's good to have you back. And of course, Eric's going to be on the comfy couch. I'm going to be in the new 80s desk office chair. It's no longer the green IKEA chair has been put off to the side. I'm in this 80s retro office chair, which feels like it's from a dentist's office or something. It might have been like surplus, like office surplus or something.
So it's no more comfortable than the other chair you had.
It's a little. I have like a cushion underneath, so it's it's bouncy. See, it's like a little bouncy too. But if I keep doing that, I'll blow the hydraulics out and I'll be sitting on the floor. So I got to be careful with that. So anyway,
okay.
For Chris, for Rob, and for Eric, this has been Dean. We will catch you on the flip side.